Trading212. I think it's long overdue for me to do a review of Trading212. Everyone keeps asking me what I think of them, in particular because of the video I made entitled Why I Don't Recommend Trading212, which now at over 40,000 views and is getting increasingly more popular, in turn giving me a lot more questions. So I thought, who better to review Trading212 than someone who was completely against them and is now using them to build his latest portfolio. And before you ask, this review isn't sponsored. If you decide to sign up, I'll get a free share, which helps cover some of the time it takes to make this video. And that's about it. I'll show you my free shares in this video as I think they're pretty damn good. Also, I'm going to give you some really important advice that you should definitely do before you rush to open your account. So before I dive into the nitty-gritty of the platform, let's address the elephants in the room. Why I didn't recommend Trading212. There were three main reasons. First, they have a very risky trading arm called CFD, or Contract for Differences. This is a highly leveraged trading product where 77% of investors lose money. In fact, it's up to 79% since I made my last video, so avoid that. This essentially means that if you trade, your stocks will go up say 10 times as much or down 10 times as much, which sounds great, but it's very dangerous. The reason I don't like this being on the website is that I don't want beginners to get confused and sign up for the wrong service that they offer. So big red flag, please just avoid it. Second was there was a lot of rumours about them making profit on the spread. What this essentially means is the price you pay for a stock isn't the real price. They mark it up and take a cut. Since then, I've had a one-on-one meeting with a member of their team and confirmed this isn't the case on their regular investment accounts. It may have been when they first started years ago, but it's definitely not now. And lastly, they weren't open, so it wasn't much good for me to recommend a platform that you couldn't sign up for. They temporarily closed after the huge GameStop saga in 2021, where users manipulated the price of GameStop and they had a gigantic surge in signups. So they paused to take stock of where they were before proceeding, which I think was a good idea. So those issues are really redundant now. I plan to link this video under my last one to update people, and I am now using them to build my brand new portfolio up to £10,000. So if you aren't subscribed, be sure to do so because that one is a lot of fun. Now let's dive into the platform. I'm going to use benchmarks against other providers so you can see how they compare. I've spent so long researching every platform for my ISA comparison videos each year, I could pretty much tell you the fees and details from memory. I know, sad right? First, why would you bother using Trading212 over a more traditional broker like Hargreaves Lansdown? Well, Trading212 is incredibly cheap, like stupidly. The risky trading arm they have also helps fund the investing arm that you will want to use. Their goal is to be easy to use, cheap and accessible for anyone, both on desktop and mobile. And it might surprise you, but the company has actually been going since 2005, where it began in Bulgaria, before entering the UK market in 2016, and it was among one of the first to offer zero commission trading, not charging you a fee to buy or sell. And at a glance, there's some very good features. You can invest from as little as £1, but you're going to need to be 18 plus, as with most platforms. As I mentioned, there is no commission on trades. They also have an option to open an ISA with them, which is zero fees. There's tons of choice what to invest in, stocks and ETFs. And they also include fractional shares, meaning you can invest a smaller amount into companies and not have to buy an entire share. For example, £10 worth of Apple not having to pay £150 for an entire share. And that's just to name a few. Let's dive into some of the key elements a little more and discuss this in more detail. So first, the main reason to use them, the fees. Now this is where Trading212 really shines. To give you a comparison, here's the fees compared to a couple of the top providers. A few of the top providers who have pretty simple fee structures to keep this easy to understand. Before you guys ask where is so and so on, if you want to compare, use this as a benchmark to check against others. So if we take, for example, a few of the main providers, Hargreaves Lansdown, AJ Bell and Freetrade. For the platform fee, HL is 0.45%, capped at £3.75 per month. AJ Bell 0.25% at £3.50 per month, and Freetrade is now £5.99 per month. And that's if you opt for an ISA, or it's free if not. Trading212 for both charge £0. That's just for the platform, but if we include how much to trade on top of that, HL is £11.95. It does decrease the more you trade, but still pretty expensive. AJ Bell is £9.95 or £1.50 if you're buying funds, and free trade is 0, but Trading212 is also 0. So let's say you were going to buy 10 stocks over the course of a year in different companies. You'd pay £164.50 over at HL, £141.50 on AJ Bell, free trade half of that at £71.88, but on Trading2 you would pay 0. The only fee you need to be aware of is the FX fee. This is a fee when you're buying in a different currency. Essentially a currency conversion fee. So for example, if you buy a stock on the US stock market, like Microsoft, you'll need to pay this. But again, it's very cheap. Hargreaves Lansdown is roughly 1%, AJ Bell's is roughly 0.75%, free trade 0.59%, and Trading212 is just 0.15%, which is super low. Of course, that one does depend if you buy US stocks or funds. There's a good chance you'll just be buying the UK version of a simple index fund like the S&P 500 or a world fund where it won't be applicable because it's priced in pounds. Speaking of funds and stocks, let's talk about what's actually available on the platform, because that's going to play a big part in your decision making. Trading212 has a combined total of 12,000 stocks and funds. To give you a comparison to put it into perspective, HL has 11,000, Free Trade has 6,000, and AJ Bell has just 2,000. You'll find pretty much all of the big stocks you want to invest in on there. One negative I would say about this though, of course, in some cases the more choice the better. Someone like Interactive Brokers has over 50,000. But for an everyday investor, me included, I would never need that range that they have. It's more for people interested in trading quite advanced foreign markets or penny stocks, which I'm definitely not. The actual dashboard itself on Trading212 is very easy to use, as well as their app. I can't particularly complain about any of them, and being a web designer, I am very picky, but I do have a couple of niggles which we'll get to in a minute. One feature I really like is their watch lists. This lets you see what's classed as the hottest stocks. You can see the biggest winners and the losers for the day, which is quite interesting. As well as stocks with upcoming earnings reports being released if you're into that kind of thing. Most importantly though, is you can set your own watch lists with companies you are looking to keep an eye on. So for example, I would go ahead and add stocks that I'm interested in, and it will show me all of the latest stats at a glance, which I find pretty helpful. Now on to what I think is a most unique feature about Trading212, despite the fees of course, which is their trading pies. If you aren't familiar with the term, you're probably thinking, what is a trading pie? No, not that kind of pie. A trading pie is essentially a pie chart that you can make, which you can assign stocks or funds to. So for example, I've made one with 4 slices, 25% in 4 stocks I'm interested in. I can choose to rebalance this from here, so say I ended up with more in one than another, it could automatically change my investments to keep them at the set percentages. What this will then let me do is say I invest £100 into the pie, it would put £25 into 4 different stocks or funds, 25% each. This can actually make your investment plans way simpler, provided of course you know what percentage split you want. You can invest directly into the trading pie. You can also choose to share these with others, so I can share my pie with you guys. I'll link mine down below, and of course you can see others people have made online. Perhaps people have made one focused on dividend stocks. One of the most particular ones is called Daily Dividends, which could be a lot of fun. However, please take these with a pinch of salt. Anyone can make a pie, even some of the top ones I look at and I don't really agree with. Everyone will have their own view on what's best, and I would recommend sticking with something safer like an index fund. One good and bad thing about trading pies is you can do auto-invest. So you can set up a pie and automatically invest say £200 to it each month, and it will split it into the set percentages that you've set. Although I do wish this was possible to do with individual stocks. For example, you would have to set up a pie with one stock or ETF in it and invest into it that way if you wanted to use auto-invest. Another feature which I don't think is particularly intuitive is the fact my balance doesn't update. So I have positions in each of these showing 0, but it doesn't register them. You have to invest directly into the pie for it to see the amount. I think that is a bit clunky and something I hope they will get sorted in the future. I feel like the rebalancing and auto-invest over on Invest Engine for me is a little bit more intuitive, but still, a nice feature for the Trading212 platform. You also get this tab called Research. This allows you to quickly look into stocks or ETFs. You can select by most popular, dividends or growth stocks just for example. What I like though is if you go into an individual stock, you can see all of the company details and the key ratios as well as a financial summary, as well as load documents like their annual report, which is quite handy. Of course, this will be more useful for someone trading stocks and wanting that research rather than passive investors. But even with a fund, you're able to see the key investor information very quickly, which is very handy. There's also this very helpful calendar tab, which is one of my favourites. This will show you upcoming economic events that could impact your investments. Of course, again with this, it depends how involved you want to be with the whole process. One thing Trading2 does well is have a collection of videos and resources to help you learn how to invest for free, which is great. You may recognise a few familiar faces. Who knows, maybe even one day you will see me on there. It's also worth noting a few of the features of Trading212 that aren't really mentioned. First off, Trading212 do have a very generous free share scheme. If you recommend a friend, you will both get a free share. I've linked this in a few of my videos, and in total I've got 82 free shares, total value being 1,243. Some have been worth around £60 and some less, but on average it's worked out to be £15.15 per share, which is pretty decent. So if you have any friends or family you can recommend the platform to, it's worth doing. I'll also pop my link down below if you found this useful and want to sign up. I would really appreciate it. Another big feature that Trading212 have just launched is the ability to have multi-currency. Now what this means is you can deposit money and convert it into certain currencies, so for example USD or Euro, and you'll earn interest on those balances. But what this means is if you buy a stock in say a US company and then sell it, you will keep the balance in dollars. This means if you want to buy another US company, you're not going to have to pay the 0.15% FX fee on your next trade. This is huge and will really make a huge difference to Trading212. The next thing which you definitely need to know is Trading212 have share lending. This feature is just being launched by Trading212, so if you can't see it yet, don't worry about it. This is something you can choose to opt in or opt out of. Essentially, they lend out your shares to other borrowers, and in exchange they get interest, which you get a cut of. This sounds dangerous, but it actually isn't, as all of the trades are backed by collateral. If something was to happen, you are completely covered. The shares are also always there in your account to buy or sell, so I see it as a win-win. This is also still covered by the FSCS, so don't worry if something goes wrong. So they have a handy calculator you can use on their website to see how much you will get. So for example, in this one, if you had £10,000 at 5%, you would actually get over 2 years £1,000, which is pretty decent. On the other hand, if you had a more common share with less invested at it, look how much your interest could be. Not quite so appealing. But still worth turning it on in my opinion, just for that small amount that you might receive. The only downside though is while your shares are being lent out, you lose your voting rights. I really doubt you're going to be voting at shareholder meetings, etc., but if that's important to you, maybe something to consider and you might want to opt out. Personally, I see it as a good thing that Trading212 are able to generate some extra revenue from it to keep the company profitable, while having no impact on you. There's also the ability in here, which has been added recently, to gain interest on your cash balance on the account. This is actually quite interesting because lower cost platforms typically don't offer you interest on your cash balance. Now there is the argument that you should probably have your money invested and not held on the account, but even so, in the meantime, something is better than nothing. So I wouldn't particularly recommend using your account for this feature, maybe keep it in a bank beforehand and then bring it in here once you're ready, but still a nice to have. It's important to note that this rate will probably change quite a lot. If you want to find out what it is, head to your account, drop down and click Earn Interest on Cash. There's one other really interesting feature they have to highlight, which is called their hot lists. This shows you how many users own each stock on the leaderboard. You can also see the risers, who's being bought the most, and the losers, who's being sold the most. You can filter these by month, week, daily or hourly, which at certain times gets pretty damn interesting. So let's talk about how Trading212 compares to the most popular alternatives. The most comparable has to be to Freetrade. Now this comparison used to be much closer. Freetrade has recently been raising more and more money while trying to find profitability. In 2022, Trading212 made a £50 million profit, while Freetrade lost nearly £40 million. Now admittedly, Freetrade is still in its growth phase and it's spending a lot of money. But with both of these guys, you are still protected by the FCA and the FSCS, so if the platforms went bust, you would be fine. but it could be a bit of a headache. Speaking of which, it is important to point out that you are fully covered, and when you look at anything financial related, make sure it's covered by the Financial Conduct Authority and you are covered by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. What this means is they have to follow procedures, and your cash balance is covered up to £85,000. This always causes confusion. Your individual stocks and ETFs are safe and they're not included in this number. They are held by a separate entity, so if the company went bust, you would still own the shares, and none of your shares could ever be claimed against their debts. Trading212 also has a very good Trustpilot score, which did surprise me. Over 21,000 reviews rated excellent with an average score of 4.6. Considering it does have that arm which exists where people lose a lot of money at a high rate, that's very impressive. But putting that aside, even we compare the two on other points, we've got 6,000 shares versus 12,000, a $5.99 account fee versus 0.59% FX fee versus 0.15%, and there's no web app versus a web app. This does make it a hard comparison. The one thing I will say Freetrade does have going for it, its ability to have a SIP, which on the Trading212 platform, it currently doesn't. One thing you do need to be aware of though with Trading212 is that it doesn't have a pension, so a SIP or a lifetime ISA. Now, I'll be honest, the reason for this is quite simple. A SIP and a lifetime ISA take a lot more paperwork on their end to cover. While an ISA is still work, it's very attractive to bring in new customers. So with low cost brokers, they don't offer the service, or it will be an additional charge like you'll see over on Freetrade. But still, I think the majority of people might not be looking for that. The problem is Freetrade doesn't have a risky CFD platform, which they can use to fund it for free. So they are still looking for other ways to make it profitable. I'm not saying that's the only way Trading212 make money, but it definitely helps. Hopefully Freetrade will find profitability, but it seems like a long road to get there at this rate, opposed to Trading212 have been doing it for some years now. The more interesting comparison, in my opinion, is Trading212 versus Vanguard and InvestEngine. On Vanguard, you are just limited to the Vanguard funds, which is fine if that's what you're after. You'll pay 0.15% up to £375 for the year with no hidden fees. It gets more expensive as your account grows. InvestEngine, on the other hand, I favour over Vanguard, and by the way, I use all of these accounts right now. The reason I favour this is because I don't have to pay that 0.15% fee and I'm not limited to just Vanguard. Granted, if you want the Life Strategy funds, it's not on there, but I don't want those. Life Strategy also isn't available on Trading212 right now. There's a few listings, but they're only available on the German and Italian stock markets, so I would ignore those. If you're just purely a passive ETF investor, I would just go for InvestEngine, because it handles the whole process much more intuitively, and in my opinion the rebalancing works much better. If you want ETFs and stocks, then Trading212 will be your best bet. What I will say though, which is very important, please open a regular account, not an ISA, on both Trading212 and any other platforms like InvestEngine that you would like. You can only open one ISA per tax year, and so many people get this wrong and have to wait an entire year to find the right platform. So open up both, get a free share on Trading212, a £25 welcome bonus on InvestEngine, then you can try both even with a small amount. Perhaps even just look around and see which one you prefer before opening your ISA. Trust me, it will be way worth doing it in the long run. I will pop my links in the description for them just because they aren't always available, and I've had a few people not go through the links and then wonder where their free bonus is. If you have any questions about Trading212, please let me know in the comments and I will do my best to answer every one. And if you haven't already seen it, check out the latest episode of my new Trading212 portfolio and watch that grow with me. I hope this was helpful and has cleared up my thoughts on Trading212. Thanks.